Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So I am really excited for today's video because I feel like on the channel here in the last little bit we've been doing a lot of sort of affordable, lower priced unbox videos, but this CGC 9.8 is a legitimate investment grade comic book for sure. There's quite a few things about this one that make it really special. I think, you know, one of the sort of general things is somehow, like, simultaneously, it's, like, extremely underfollowed, but it's still, like, a huge key issue with huge first appearances. So, yeah, we got to get into the details on this one. It's a really cool, sort of underfollowed big key issue that I think that I'm probably going to recommend to everyone, too, certainly if you like some of the first appearances in this book, too. It's a DC CGC 9.8. And I boiled it down to 3 reasons why I ended up pulling the trigger, but a lot to get through on this one, so let's take a look at the newest addition to the CGC 9.8 collection here. It's a DC Spotlight #1. Yeah, check out this cover, just the awesome montage of all the DC superheroes there, and they're all smiling too, which I actually really like. You don't see too many, superhero covers where they're all kind of smiling and stuff, so nice to see everyone happy on this cover. So DC Spotlight #1, what is this? And to take a look on the back cover too, just a great colorful wraparound cover. It was by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who's got quite a few sort of late 70s, 80s DC covers that I kind of like from that artist. So, but DC Spotlight #1. So, a couple things to go through before we get on the census here and check out the price that I paid. This comic book was a free comic book in 1985. So a free book, you can imagine, most people didn't think of it as a collector item back then and didn't really keep it in pretty good shape. So pretty tough to find in the 9.8 for sure. So it was a free comic book, but the 2 main things I think that, people are attracted to this book for it being a key issue is this is the first time you ever get a preview of Batman the Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Such a classic Batman story. That's kind of like, a lot of people think of it as like the first modern appearance of Batman. Like it's just a complete sort of reimagination of Batman, sort of, by Frank Miller. Such a classic story. You get a preview of that in here, which is probably like the main reason why I bought it. You also get a preview of Watchmen. Yeah, Alan Moore's Watchmen. You get a preview of that in this book. This is a 1985. It doesn't give you a month of when it came out, so I'd imagine it was just kind of distributed at comic shops as a free comic all throughout 1985. But Watchmen doesn't come out until like late 1986. Like Watchmen #1 doesn't come out until late 1986. So you get like a year ahead of Watchmen #1, whereas Batman the Dark Knight Returns is an early 1986 book. So I have a feeling like more sort of, hardcore Watchmen collectors will be a little bit more attracted to this book as it being legitimately the first, appearance of Watchmen, over a year before Watchmen #1 came out, which most people think of as the first, appearance of Watchmen. I have a feeling most people will be attracted to this book more so because of the Watchmen preview. But yeah, I mean, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. If you're a huge Batman fan like me, that's really another great reason to want this book. So DC Spotlight #1. Let's have a look on the census for this free comic book that came out. There's only 22 CGC 9.8s, and yeah, I already have a Batman: The Dark Knight Returns #1. And, I love that book. I'm on record as sort of saying I want another one kind of deal. But, with this having the sort of first appearance or the first preview ever of Batman the Dark Knight Returns, and then there only being 22 in the CGC 9.8, I think that's what really kind of made me take the leap and grab this one. We'll look at the 9.8 ratio, 17.1%. So 17.1% of all graded copies are CGC 9.8, so it's a really underfollowed, scarce one to find in a high grade, so there's not too many graded. But actually for a DC book, DC books don't tend to get a really low 9.8 ratio like Amazing Spider-Man books and other Marvel books. They just seem like, I think DC collectors just take care of their books a little bit more, better, and then they don't trade them as much too as like Amazing Spider-Man books and things like that. So 17.1% for a mid-80s book is actually a really good 9.8 ratio for a Batman book or for a DC comic of the mid-80s. It's pretty much neck and neck with Batman The Dark Knight Returns. I think that is like a 16 or 17% CGC 9.8 ratio, so about the same rarity as a Batman The Dark Knight Returns. So let's talk about price for this one, because yeah, with these sort of lower volume books with only 22 9.8s out there, the price I think sort of is a little bit more volatile than a sort of high volume issue, I guess. So the price I paid for this one was $432.60. And yeah, it ended up being, I bought this one from My Comic Shop, which is like a well-known comic shop in the States, certainly online. I bought it directly from their site because I was sort of trying to make a deal for this book on eBay through My Comic Shop, and they weren't like, they were basically right around $500 was the lowest they would go on eBay, and FeeBay, you know, they gotta sort of go a little bit above because there's so much fees on eBay for sellers. So I went directly on their site and did a little negotiation on their site. They have a little kind of offer thing set up on their website, and was able to kind of negotiate an offer. It was like just over 400. I think it was like 410 or something like that. And then they have like this 3% fee. So with the 3% fee and the final price, it ended up being $432.60 for this one, plus a little bit of shipping. But My Comic Shop has pretty reasonable shipping to Canada from the States, so just try to get reasonable shipping on it would be my recommendation. So $432.60 I think is a decent price. It's not a great price. I bet if you wait for this to kind of pop up in an auction, you probably get it under $400, to be honest. Looking on eBay and looking out there, there was just on Google, doing some Google searches, there was a site out there that's trying to sell one for $625. And then on eBay, I was having a look, and I think there's one on eBay for like $525 right now. No offer, just kind of a buy it now, $525. So it is pretty hard to get this book at a lower price. However, I was speaking to it was team member Steven, who sort of initially recommended this book to me, and he had mentioned he got his for like, I think it was like $250, he said. I think it was like maybe under $300 was what he said, and I'm assuming he sort of got it a couple years ago. So, you know, you get a little bit of price history there. I think, you know, maybe I paid up a little bit, but one thing you really like to see is when people are like, yeah, I bought this book 2-3 years ago for like $250. And then you look at the prices now and they're like $400, $500. That's a good trend. That is a solid trend. You like to see that, especially with these sort of underfollowed type of books, that there's not a lot printed, there's not a lot of 9.8s. So you just like to see that price trending up. And I think that's a positive for this book, that the price is trending up. And, you know, more thinking about the first two appearances, Watchmen and Batman The Dark Knight Returns, I was reading an article and they made a good point where Batman The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen are basically the two stories that started DC off into their kind of grittier storylines. You know, before that, they were certainly more gritty than Marvel, but this kind of took it to a whole nother level, I think. And another thing is Batman The Dark Knight Returns is basically credited, and I've heard this from multiple people, that Batman The Dark Knight Returns is kind of the first Copper Age modern comic book ever. Because Frank Miller used so many awesome techniques in it, so many modern kind of comic book techniques that have been used since. And it really is, to a lot of people, the first modern comic book, the first Copper Age modern comic book, Batman The Dark Knight Returns #1. So to sort of have the first preview in this book, I think is just special. And then that other reason there where, sort of the two more grittier DC storylines of the 80s sort of ushered in this whole new generation. And now there's like Deceased and all these, you know, crazy, Dark Knight's death metal and all these wild DC stories. And it all pretty much started with Batman The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. So let's get into those three reasons, and I probably have alluded to them because I've been blabbering on here. But first reason, you get those two classic first appearances. And I know too, people out there sort of debate, is it a first appearance, or people say I consider these like first preview appearances and stuff like that. And I'm fine with that. Like a preview appearance, first appearance, whatever, still extremely cool. Still super rare on the census in the 9.8. So however you think of the first appearance, that's fine. But this did come out before, Batman the Dark Knight Returns and the Watchmen. So really cool to have those two classic first appearances that are sort of associated with, DC bringing in some of these grittier storylines and bringing comic books into the modern age. Because, everything before that was just like Spider-Man and Mary Jane being like super naive and like it was just, those super politically correct type of stories. But yeah, I think Batman the Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen are pretty special for bringing in those grittier stories. Number 2 reason here. The first reason was the classic first appearances that you get. The second reason, looks awesome on the census. 1 of 22. That's really what kind of sold me on it. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, cool. First, Batman the Dark Knight Returns, that's pretty cool. First Watchmen, I'm not too into Watchmen, to be honest, but still cool. Then when I looked on the census, I was like, wow, only 22 out there. That would be a really cool feeling to have kind of a 1 of 22 collector item of the Batman the Dark Knight Returns. And then when I looked at, Batman the Dark Knight Returns in the 9.8 blue label, number 1, is going to, it's going to put you back about $700 right now. I've seen a lot of them sell for over $700 in the past couple months here. So I just thought, as sort of the first Batman the Dark Knight Returns, a 1 of 22 collector item, for less than Batman the Dark Knight Returns number 1, like a couple $100 less, considerably less, it just really started to make sense, given that comparison. So it looks awesome on the census, the second reason. 1 of 22 feels awesome to have that as a collector item. And a third reason here is I think this has a very high potential over the long term. Yeah, there's, I think Batman the Dark Knight Returns number 1 in the CGC 9.8 is probably the best Batman investment grade 9.8 book that you can buy. So, this one's kind of side by side with that book as a really underfollowed one, I think, though. Certainly not one where people know the cover and everything. Like, it's going to take time for that to kind of catch on, but, for this being the first appearance of Batman the Dark Knight Returns, and for it to be a couple $100 cheaper in the 9.8 than Batman the Dark Knight Returns number 1, I could see this sort of maybe, getting right up there, bouncing around that Batman the Dark Knight Returns price over time, maybe. And yeah, you're certainly seeing online that $625 price on eBay, so there's certainly some people trying to get, pretty high buck for this comic book. So yeah, DC Spotlight number 1. I think the thing that's really cool about it, and kind of just cool about the hobby in general, is I did not know about this book before team member Steven had let me know about it. So, didn't know about it at all. He let me know, did a little research. Wow, first appearance of the Batman the Dark Knight Returns was the big thing for me, and the Watchmen. I believe there's a preview of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, too. Like, there's a lot of cool previews in this one. But, I did not know about this book, let's call it a month ago before I ordered it kind of thing. And, I just thought it really kind of has a niche. Yeah, and I think there's potential there over the long term. And that's the third reason. I think it does have a high potential to appreciate in price with a really long-term view. Like, all my CGC 9.8s, I kind of want to hold on to them for like 20 years, basically. At least, I would say. And I think if you have that kind of time frame with this book, you're going to do really well if you can get it around $400. Okay, so a really interesting book. Yeah, and again, it's kind of good to do sort of a full investment grade unbox here, because I feel like I have been sort of picking away at some, affordable books that are cool to me and things like that. But I think this one, even though it's underfollowed, even though it's not a main key, but you get those big first appearances, so rare on the census, cheaper than Batman Dark Knight Returns number 1 in the 9.8 still. I think that has a chance to kind of even out where maybe they might be about both the same price. And who knows, long term, if people start focusing on, like if over time, there's only ends up being like 30 or 40 of these in the 9.8. In like, say in 20 years, there's only 40 9.8s on the census. Like, I could see this book, the ceiling is even higher than a Batman the Dark Knight Returns number 1 in the first print. I think it just had, like, it has a little bit of short-term potential, kind of, but I think it possibly has some really big long-term potential. Yeah, just, you know, two big, you know, cult of fans there, like Batman: The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. So if you're really into those two things and you want the sort of first time ever in print media, these characters were ever shown, this is the book. So it's, you know, and there's only 22 of them in the 9.8. So a lot of reasons to sort of think that I think the potential is a lot higher over the long term than kind of people are thinking now. And certainly there's not a lot of people thinking anything now because it's so underfollowed. And I didn't even know about it up to about a month ago. Did not know about this one. So yeah, just a really interesting book that captivated me, and I wanted to, enough to pull the trigger. And I think that little comparison to Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, that one being about $700, and then, you know, I can grab this for $400. That seemed pretty reasonable to me because I do legitimately want another Batman: The Dark Knight Returns #1 in the 9.8. I do have one already, but I'd like another one that is, yeah, as I said, the best Batman 9.8 I think to buy. And maybe this could be the best underfollowed Batman, 9.8 to buy, possibly. And yeah, I think that price comparison does sort of make it a little more attractive, maybe. Okay, so DC Spotlight, #1. Yeah, such a cool book. Another thing to mention too, case, perfect condition. Scans looked amazing. This, it looks untouched. Like, I've just been getting so lucky lately. Like, I am one to kind of pick apart 9.8s when I get them. Like, oh, there's a spine dink, there's this, oh, there's the littlest scratch on the case. But the past few I've got, including this one, perfect. Yeah, perfectly flat. The spine is like I'm not even seeing any micro dinks. Like, it is, for an 80s 9.8, that's, I mean, it's one of the best ones I've seen, pretty much, yeah. Getting pretty lucky lately with some of these high-grade 9.8s, yeah. So I did make that one video about the differences where not all 9.8s are the same. Like, you know, humans are grading these, so there's going to be mistakes and issues maybe, and the encapsulation, you know, there's sometimes for no reason there could be Newton rings, or maybe this, you know, the CGC case gets scratched, and like at rate out coming from CGC, that happens at times too. So yeah, getting pretty lucky lately with the last few 9.8s, just super top grade ones, looking amazing. So DC Spotlight #1, if you're into underfollowed DC books with these big first appearances of the characters in this book, it's one to have a look at. Yeah, maybe in the raw as well, for sure. I think the 9.8s are really rare but expensive, so, you know, whatever matches your budget. All right, before we wrap it up here, I'll invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Yeah, I would love to have you on our comic book collecting and comic book investing team. And hit the bell for all the latest notifications for new videos. Add me on Instagram and Twitter. Give the video a like too. I think that helps us out, getting us kind of in the YouTube algorithm. But thank you very much for watching today. Yeah, hopefully, you know, I did mention this on, you know, a video we did like 3-4 weeks ago when I first bought it. But hopefully you're watching and maybe this is a new book for you to hunt, because I just think it's so cool, especially if you're a Batman: The Dark Knight Returns fan or a Watchmen fan. And I really like this cover too. Yeah, the montage cover of all the heroes smiling. I just love that. That was probably another detail I could have put on the reasons, because yeah, I was like on the fence, and I'm like, you know, do I want to put this money toward another new Batman: The Dark Knight Returns #1? And yeah, just seeing all the heroes kind of smiley and everything, and I try to be a positive person, so I just thought it was cool to see them all, because literally every hero is smiling. Like, I think they made a point of it to have the cover with all the heroes smiling. So yeah, that's really cool, I think. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, DC Spotlight #1 is one to consider, absolutely. Really appreciate all the support from the whole team, and yeah, message me on Instagram if you had anything to ask me. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Thanks so much for watching, though. I'll see you on the next one.